Hey, today I would like to show you how I made this chain. So I add a cube, scale it a bit and add one loop cut. Now I merge some vertices to create the spike. Next I removed a half of the spike and added a mirror. I moved the object and set up all the axes for the mirror. Next I began editing the spike according to the concept art. I created an additional edge using J-key. I merged two more vertices and placed them at the center of symmetry. Then I made few corrections. I changed the view to position myself so I could see whether the mirror was applied correctly. Then I removed the unnecessary vertices. Now the mirror worked correctly. Next I selected the back of the spike and inset it. You can press B to inset only the boundary edges. Then I extruded the shank of the spike along the x-axis. I did some tweaks and I realized I need to remove a few unnecessary faces. To remove a face, simply select it, press X and then choose delete. Next I proceeded to extrude a single vertex along the edge of the concept. Then I went to object mode and duplicate the spike. I selected the unnecessary vertices and delete them. Next in object mode I selected the spike and grabbed it to position it. After that I scaled it down slightly and rotated. I selected both objects and pressed Ctrl+J to combine them into one. Next I continued extruding the vertices. I selected the vertex of the small spike and connected them using the F key. My main goal at the time was to define the basic shape of the chain link. Then I started building the geometry by extruding the vertices and then filling them by clicking F to fill. I want to achieve a shape similar to the one in the attached concept image. Sometimes it is worth pausing and thinking through the next steps. It's much easier to work when you have a plan. I extrude a few more vertices, trying to work out the geometry. Thanks to the mirror, we work 8 times faster. I set the clipping on the mirror so that vertices aligned with the mirror edge would automatically collapse. I'm always thinking about how to obtain geometry that results in quads after filling. When a vertex is missing on an existing edge, I add it using Ctrl+R. Then I filled empty space. If the path continues with quads, pressing the F key a few times will automatically add new quads. Next I align the edge to a single axis using the combination S+Z+0. This option scaling all the vertices together along the Z-axis to 0. Keep in mind that this method does not work with the individual origins transform setting. Later I moved on the further redefining and adding geometry. If you liked this video and would like to see more projects like this, let me know in the comments. Then I created a sort of bridge between the vertices, keeping in mind their distance and position so that I could later fill them all at once using the F key. Next I added smooth by angle to see how the geometry is laid out and check for shading artifacts. I built a second bridge and filled it with the technique I mentioned earlier. I started positioning the vertices in a way that preserves the object's flow. By pressing G twice, you can slide vertices or edge along the geometry. Next I close the geometry, creating a complete chain link. Once again I had to rethink how to approach the empty space. I encountered a problem involving an inconsistent number of loop cuts that I need to fix. The best solution turned out to be changing the flow of the faces. I filled in the missing middle section. I had to work out the best possible option here. The main goal was to distribute the vertices evenly. Here I dissolved an edge loop and slide the other one slightly downwards. I noticed that the shading on some vertices was being ruined by their poor positioning. So to preserve the flow, I selected them and pushed them out along the z-axis to create a more rounded shape. I also wanted to add some interesting sharp details so the chain wouldn't be too simple. So I added a loop cut and merged a few vertices. I couldn't leave that element like that, so I corrected it later. Next, I selected a few edges that I wanted to be sharp. I entered edit mode, and by right-clicking I chose the mark sharp. In this case, I had to spread the vertices apart at all costs, so they wouldn't be too close to each other. Such an arrangement causes shading issues. I also added a mark sharp to the notch. Then I added a bevel to flatten the edge of the chain and prepared it for further processing. I decided to extend the cutout in the upper section, so I selected the relevant face and scaled them to 0 along the z-axis by pressing S, Z and 0. Then I slide them along the axis while holding Ctrl to align them with the others. Remember to set snapping to vertices, edges or faces so that the snap works correctly. Next I added a small cut using knife tool to the spike. Then I connected the resulting edge to an additional loop cut that I had added to maintain the quads. I decided to slightly redefine the object's flow once again by aligning the vertices and moving them using the G key. I added another loop cut to create the indentation for the spike. Then I extrude the face inwards. Now I removed unnecessary vertices. I reworked it to get quads. For one edge I used dissolve option, so I didn't have to rebuild the geometry from scratch. In stylized object, it's important that the edges emphasize the shape. Next, I added a few mark sharp to define the edges. I once again made a subtle adjustment to the object flow. Mark sharp is an essential tool for sharpening edges. I also decided to add an extra loop cut to enlarge the middle section. Using a knife, I closed the loop. I also added a single cut to preserve the quad structure. Next, I fixed the issue with 3 edge loops that were too close together. After redefining the shape again, I pulled out a middle edge loop and aligned it with the highest edge of the chain. Next, I redefined the shape once more to make the chain look more interesting. At that point, I also decided to reshape the inner edges. I create a subtle recess for the next link. Then I slightly thickened the chain by scaling it along the z-axis. I used the knife tool to remove unnecessary geometry, then selected the unwanted edges and dissolved them. To maintain the flow, I used the G key pressed twice to slide edges. This resulted in a better rounding effect. I've made a few more adjustments. Then I marked the edges of the center and marked them sharp. I did the same in the inner link of the chain. I closed the mark sharp loop, and next I applied the mirror using Ctrl+A shortcut. Finally, I have to admit that this model isn't perfectly optimized. I should reduce the vertices count a bit more, and the edge flow could have been cleaner. I made those adjustments in the final version, but I didn't record that part. Then I added 2 links at the top and bottom and removed half of each. I connected it using the shortcut Ctrl+J and I added an array along the z-axis. This chain will be part of my chain generator add-on, which should be available soon. If you would like to support my channel, please check out my add-ons or consider supporting me via Patreon. Thanks for watching and see you soon.